Hello, my fellow librarian, Sean, one of your co-hosts here. Thank you so much for listening to these first few episodes of the Eternal Library. We are so thankful to you and to the Lord for all the feedback and encouragement we've already received on the show and can't wait to see what he continues to do with and through it. I just wanted to let you guys know about our email list that is now live. This is how we're going to send out updates and info on the show. If you sign up, you'll get a monthly newsletter with exclusive behind-the-scenes content. You'll get the opportunity to submit questions about books we've already covered that Daniel and I will answer at the top of each episode. You'll also get to suggest books you'd like to see covered in future episodes. And as a bonus for signing up, you'll get a specially curated list of Daniel and I's favorite books for you to dig in and explore on your own. What else could a person ask or dream of? There's a lot of great stuff going on here at the Eternal Library. A lot of great episodes coming your way. You just need your library card, aka your email address, to get in and get past the stuffy librarian and join us all the way in the back as we dig and explore more of the great works of literature that have been produced here in God's great big beautiful world. So the link will be in the description of all the episodes moving forward. So sign up today. And now enjoy this episode of the Eternal Library.
O death, old captain, it's time. Weigh anchor. We're bored of this place, O death. Let's get out of here. If the sky and the sea are black as ink, you know that our hearts are full of sunlight. Give us your poison to comfort us. Insomuch as our minds are burning, we want to plunge to the bottom of the abyss, hell or heaven. What's the difference? To the depths of the unknown to find something new. From Le Voyage by Charles Baudelaire, Les Fleurs du Mal, 1857. Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Eternal Library. Welcome back. You decided to join us again. Here I am. I'm Daniel Moran, your host, one of your hosts, and I'm joined today by special guest
Sean Malarkey. I didn't realize you were cueing me there. I didn't realize you wanted me to say my name.
It's okay. A silence would be fitting.
Yes, because I have nothing to say. Ever.
And we're excited to be here. This is episode 3, is it not?
It's episode 3. It is.
I counted 3.
I counted 3, Mr. Wayne. Batman Begins reference to start off.
So here we are today. Today's podcast episode will be most unfortunate.
This is going to be the worst episode we've ever done.
This episode today will be filled with misery, woe, and misfortune. Sean, why is that?
Well, it's because we today are going to be reviewing and critiquing and discussing book 1 of the series of unfortunate events titled The Bad Beginning. Pause, restart.
A Bad Beginning.
A Bad Beginning. It's The Bad Beginning. It's the ultimate one. The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. So if you enjoy podcasts about happy things filled with happy children who have both their parents in their lives and nothing bad ever happens to them and they get everything they want and they inherit their inheritance without any complications and no one tries to steal it from them and everything's just sunshine, rainbows, and butterflies, then I would just suggest that you hit pause on this and you go listen to a different podcast.
Yes, because today's episode will not have a happy ending.
There is no happy ending, which is, you may be wondering why it's titled A Series of Unfortunate Events. It's because, as the title suggests,
everything is wonderful and things turn out all right.
Except,
the end.
Except, no, they don't.
Except
they never do. As the title suggests, it is a series of unfortunate events, implying that only unfortunate things happen to the characters in these novels. Daniel, last time we did The Hobbit, and I'm sure all of our listeners, by and large, are somewhat familiar with The Hobbit, but not everyone may be as familiar with A Series of Unfortunate Events. Can you kind of give a little synopsis of what the books are, what they're about?
It's true. A series of unfortunate events. The first novel published in 1999, The Bad Beginning was the title. A best-selling, very popular, world-renowned series about 3 orphaned children whose parents are killed and whose home is destroyed in a fire, of which there is mystery surrounding it. And the children...
I hope you don't like having the mysteries revealed.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
No. So these 3 orphan children whose last name is Baudelaire, a French name. Their names are Violet, Klaus, and Sunny Baudelaire. Over the course of the series, the 3 children are taken to different houses and different locations to be looked after by different guardians. And hot on their trails is a villainous character named Count Olaf.
Oh, we're going to talk about Count Olaf. I got things to say about
Count Olaf, who is in pursuit of the Baudelaire's fortune, which the children can't access until Violet, the eldest, comes of age. And so in each book...
Which, as we all know, is 18.
Yeah, I think Violet is... Doesn't she start the books as 12 or 13?
She's like 14.
14? Okay, yeah 14. Klaus is 12. That's it.
Yes.
He's 11 or 12.
Yes.
Violet is 14 or 15.
And Sunny is an infant.
Sunny's a
by
baby.
the way, that age gap between Klaus and his younger sister.
Hey, that's fine.
We can safely assume Sunny was a surprise baby.
Sunny.
She was one of those oopsies. Except not really. There's no oopsie children. All children are given
so until Violet can be old enough and inherit the money that belongs to them, they're kind of stuck in this limbo where they don't really have the ability to live on their own. They're taken from house to house, and Count Olaf, looking to capitalize on this situation, is trying to get their fortune. That's the basic plot structure.
Yes.
Spread this over 13 books.
13 books.
Almost a decade of publication history, and you have what we like to call a series of unfortunate events.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for that wonderful synopsis. It is indeed an unfortunate series.
Written by an author whose pseudonym, and I just want to put my mouth even closer to the mic when I say this, whose pseudonym is Lemony Snicket.
Snicket.
That's right. You heard that right. Lemony Snicket. A great name. If you're gonna write a series of books and you're gonna have like a fake name, well, I bet you wouldn't think of Lemony Snicket.
I would go with the Great Zamboni. Or something like that. I would go with Big Boss Magoo or something like that.
The Great Zamboni.
Yeah.
No, but his real name is Daniel Handler. But he goes by Lemony Snicket, and when he writes the stories, he's in character, and that's part of their charm. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the episode.
Yes. Thank you, Dan, for that synopsis. So, as you know, dear listener, our goal is to equip the church to enjoy good stories to the glory of God, to be able to discern the good, true, and the beautiful within each story that you may come across. And so, in a book series where the whole premise of the book is only bad things happen, it may be kind of tricky to kind of discern that, to understand, like, okay, how do I read this as a Christian? How do I enjoy this? This leads us into a topic we've already discussed prolifically, Daniel, and I thought maybe we'd get to it later, but here we are already.
Well, so this is a daunting task because the stories, first of all, it's a children's series.
Yes.
It's written in a language style that caters to, I don't know, grade school aged children. So there's one layer. The second layer is everything that happens to them is depressing, and the novels don't end. Not one book of the 13 ends happily.
No, not a single one.
But then there's another layer on top of that, which is that they're also funny.
Yes.
So it's sort of like, I don't know whether to cry or laugh at this. So what do you do with this? And the author, staunch atheist, the books are filled with an anti-God message, which we definitely want to talk about because how do you respond to that? But so the real reason why we're talking about this, besides that it's a best-selling series, very popular, it had a Netflix adaptation, I think.
It had a Netflix adaptation as well as a theatrical film starring Jim Carrey, of all people, as Count Olaf, as the villain of the story. So, like, Jim, if you're listening, you want to come on the podcast, talk about your time making the film, we'd love to have you.
Wild. But not only its popularity, but this is one of the first books that launched me on my reading journey. Yes. There was a time in my life, in my childhood, when I didn't like to read at all, and this is the book that changed me into a lover of books and of reading, much to my own surprise.
Much to your chagrin. A word which here means much to your regrets and
unceasing woe and anguish, because the book series ended up being 13 books long, and I wouldn't have known that at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I remember, like, when I first became aware of them, like, I think there was 5 or 6 that were out at the time.
That's like what I was too.
Yeah. Like, there were.
How did you first hear about them, or when did you first get your hands on them?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. When I first came across this book series, it was actually, if my memory serves me right, it was actually in Mrs. DiCarlo's 4th grade class at Henderson Elementary in St. Peters, Missouri. So my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. DiCarlo, you know how it is, like public school, like if you're a product of the public school system, same, my condolences to you. But Mrs. DiCarlo, she was a champ. And during the English portion of our studies as 4th graders, I remember at one point in the school year, she read us The Bad Beginning. And she picked it up, and for every day, for probably about an hour, she would read us a few chapters from it. And I don't remember why. I don't remember if we talked about it or not, if we discussed it as a class afterwards, but she would basically she read the entire book to us. And if I recall, she read maybe even the first 3.
The first 3 books? In their entirety?
Yes. Wow. So we're talking The Bad Beginning, The Reptile Room, The Wide Window. Those are the first 3 in the series. But that was my first exposure to the book. And I remember as a kid. So, as Daniel alluded to, the author, Lemony Snicket, is in character while he's writing the books, and he is painting himself as this researcher, almost like a journalist, who's researching the history of the misery that is the Baudelaire orphans' lives and their ongoing conflict with Count Olaf. He writes it in such a way where he is like. So at the beginning of the podcast, when we were like, don't listen to this podcast, we did that because this is what he does. Every single book, he discourages you from reading the book. He's like, please do not read this book. I want you to be happy. I don't want you to be depressed. I want you to have an enjoyable life. If you read this book, you're just going to be depressed and miserable your entire life because nothing good happens in this book. And so what an amazing marketing scheme. First of all, what an amazing way to get some, like, as we know, and this is even true in scripture, like if you want to get someone to do something, tell them they can't do it. So you're like, don't read the book. We want to read it more. But he's also presenting the Baudelaire's story as something that he himself has researched. And as you get deeper into the books, there's a conspiracy that he's like uncovering as it comes along. There's all these little breadcrumbs along the way about like why the Baudelaire's orphans' house was burned down, why their parents were killed, who Count Olaf is in relation to their parents, all this stuff. And he presents it in such a way as something that he has discovered on Earth. And there's even, it's hinted that there are bad actors who are trying to stop him from revealing the story and getting it out to the world. And so I remember hearing this as a 4th grader, and I was just like, someone's got to help this guy. Like someone like it was real. And this is a testament to him as his gifting as a world builder and as a writer for a children's novel is I believed every word. Yeah. I was just like, these kids are out there somewhere, and they need our help. And they need our help. And like this guy, so who's gonna do something about this Count Olaf guy? Like, where's the cops? Where's the FBI? Like, get the president on the phone. Like, someone's got to do something about this guy. And that was my first exposure to the books. But how about you, Daniel? When did you first discover them?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because that's one of the oldest tricks in the book. Daniel Defoe, who wrote the novel Robinson Crusoe, very old, probably considered the first English novel, wrote a novel about a man called Robinson Crusoe who's shipwrecked on an island for something ridiculous like 30 years. And he received letters. Yeah. We want to meet him. Yeah. Doesn't exist. Robinson Crusoe is a fictional character, based off of Alexander Selkirk, a real man, but who did not live for 30 years. Yeah.
So Couldn't even make it 2 weeks.
No. So the novel is an embellishment, but Daniel Defoe's writing style is so journalistic and so accurate and filled with detail that it's so here's Lemony Snicket writing kind of in the same way. It's fine to fall. You said I fell for it or something. It's fine because it's been happening for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
The great novelists know how to do this, how to make it seem real.
And just as an aside, like, as you're talking about it, Dracula does the same thing. Yeah. Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's all written in letters and stuff. And in fact, now that I think about it, when I first discovered Dracula as a child, like when I first picked up the book and tried to read it, I don't think I finished it, but I had the same experience. I was just like, geez, this dude is out there. Like, holy cow. Like, I thought this was a made up story, but this guy's got journal entries. He's got letters. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's a great motif throughout many stories, and it's a good tradition in literature. And to a certain extent, it is real. In one of the later books, I think it's maybe book 9, Snicket himself writes something to the effect that the story of the Baudelaire children is taking place in a very real world. So there are facets of it that are real. I'm not sure that's what intrigued me initially when I was a kid and I picked up the books. You have to understand, when I first held the Bad Beginning in my hand, I didn't like reading at all. So this is childhood Daniel Moran, who's spending time playing outside, running around, very active. And I thought reading was a chore. So just to show you how little reading I did, I read the first sentence of the book and then closed the book and thought, woof, we've done a lot of reading for today. That's enough. Time to go outside. So that was all I could stand, because I hated reading because it meant you had to sit still. But the first sentence of the book was all that was required for me to become curious about it, because the opening of the Bad Beginning is, if you are interested in stories with happy endings, then you'd be better off reading some other book. That's how the book opens.
Again, he's like, don't read this book, please.
Yeah. And first of all, I thought, kind of like you, Sean, like, this is terrible marketing. Like, this guy's not going to sell any books. Like, someone needs to correct his error, But then I thought,
you knew that he was making a joke. You knew he was playing us.
No, I didn't understand the subtleties of reverse psychology, as a 12-year-old or however old I was reading this. I thought initially he told me to read another book. Like, this is a grown-up. I'm just trying to be an obedient child. He says not to read the book. Like, but, why?
Yeah. You're like, okay, I guess I'll go read Huck Finn.
Yeah. So, but the second part is, well, why isn't it a happy ending? All stories need to have a happy ending. So it was this, like, I don't know, this philosophical problem in my head. Like, can a story have a sad ending?
By the way, I love hearing your history with reading, because all of them, your interaction with books is always just like, wait, why is that the case? Your brain as a 12-year-old did not work the way most 12-year-olds' brains worked.
This is your brain when it's Moran.
This is your brain on books.
That's true. So that was the first catch that got me. Was I was just intrigued because I'd never in my life, 12 years, not long of a life, but I'd never seen anything close to a sad, depressing, unfulfilling ending. I guess I didn't watch those movies.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know what it looked like, and I thought at the time I didn't know it was a series. I should have been a dead giveaway because the title is The Bad Beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't read anything, so I didn't know. Like, I knew so little. On the spine of the book, there's a big number 1, and you're like, oh, maybe there's going to be another one after this. I was so dumb. I just was like, maybe all books have that. I don't know.
Also, it's called a series.
I don't know. Yeah. So there's no excuse for my 12-year-old neglect of reading, but I had no idea what I was getting into. Didn't pay any attention to the cover. Probably didn't even look at the cover. Just wanted to go right into the book and be over with it as quickly as possible. So I landed on that first sentence, and I thought, okay, what's your game, Snicket? And then,
what are you up to?
So then I kept reading, and then so it's an intriguing story of its own, and I think the story won me over. But man, there's nothing like Lemony Snicket for interruptions, digressions, and long excursuses, or excursi, I don't know the plural of that word is, long essays
yes,
that break up the story and have him tell you all about his personal made-up life, his commentary about the story that he's telling, and further admonitions for you not to read it.
Yes.
And I don't know what it is. This is going to sound really weird. I ate that stuff up. When I was a kid, every time he interrupted, it was like, I don't know. It's like we had entered another room and he was like talking to me, like one-on-one. This was like discipleship almost, you know? And I just felt like, wow, this, you know, so having his narrative voice inside my head, I don't know what it was. I connected with it. I loved following his train of thought. I loved anything he had to tell me. I would have received it then.
Yeah.
I was just a sponge of a brain.
Yeah. I think this is a good example of like, it's why it's quintessentially a children's book series. We were talking before we started recording about how this book series was being released around the same time as Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And it kind of stands in the shadow of Harry Potter. So it didn't have as wide of a following as the Harry Potter novels did, of course, but it still had its fan base and that were very loyal to it and still are, you know. You know, the Netflix series came out just a few years ago and people ate it up, people who grew up with these novels. But the point I'm making is like, unlike Harry Potter, where the books kind of grow with their audience, it seems to me that the series of unfortunate events always kind of stays as a children's book series. Because he uses a lot of the same tropes. It does get more mature as things go on, and there are things that happen, and the books get longer. So assuming like people with longer attention spans are going to be reading it. But one of the things he does throughout the books is something I did earlier, which is where he uses a word that a child might not understand, and then he defines the term. He defines the word. He does this so many times. He'll be like, the Baudelaires were feeling despondent, which here is a
word which here means, and then he'll say something that's not the Merriam-Webster definition.
Yes.
But it's something that applies to the story in a cutesy kind of snarky way.
Yes, exactly.
A word which here means they had eaten too much bad food and their stomachs were upsetting them. And it's like, that's not what the word despondent means, but it applies to this context.
But it is like a good use of it. And, you know, when I was reading it recently, I reread it for the point of this podcast. I found that stuff to be almost kind of annoying. I was just like, I know what these words mean. And I'm an adult, dang it. But a kid is going to be reading that and be like, oh, I learned something. And he has a unique gift to like talk down to the level of a child and bring them into this world, you know?
And at the same time, though, sound like something very adult is occurring.
Yes, and very adult things are occurring.
Yeah, it's true.
Throughout the novel, throughout the whole series. Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the themes that are going on? Like, tell us more about the unfortunate nature of the series.
Yeah, there's so many things. It is as if this is comedically stitched together in an over-exaggerated way to make this so filled with sadness that it's funny.
Yes.
But so it's going to sound absurd to just list everything, because the Baudelaires, first of all, they lose their entire family. They have no other living relatives. Their parents die and their home is destroyed in a fire.
Yes.
And the person who tells them this is an incompetent, unloving, kind of emotionally distant and completely distracted banker.
A sap.
Yeah.
He is just clueless.
Whose name is Mr. Poe, and who is father to two children named Edgar and Alan.
And they suck.
Yeah. So, but there's literary references here. So there's kind of a tongue-in-cheek literary humor as well. You know, they're being told about their misfortune by Mr. Poe, you know, author of The Raven, and The Fall of the House of Usher, and etc.
Yeah.
So they stay a while with them. The children bully the Poe children bully the Baudelaires. Oh, by the way, the Baudelaires themselves are named after Charles Baudelaire, whose poetry we read earlier.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
French poet who is infamous for writing about the worst of subjects. It's in Baudelaire's style to write a poem about a trash can or a brothel. You know, he was not William Wordsworth writing about the glories and beauties of nature. Baudelaire was the poet of the gutter. Yeah. And so these are the Baudelaire children. They're in the gutter. They're not living the happy life. They're, as it turns out, their nearest relative, their only living guardian who they can immediately go to, is this Count Olaf person who's, first of all, like has poor hygiene and is just smelly and dirty. He's rude. He shouldn't be in a guardian position over any children.
Yeah.
For many reasons.
Child services would have come knocking on his door within about a month of the Baudelaires being there.
He's selfish. Yeah. He's abusive. He spends long hours at who knows where. He's an actor, but he isn't always engaged.
That's an interesting point about him being an actor that we'll get into later. That's a huge part of his character.
Yeah. And he wears many masks, and all of them are terrible. He's a villainous, cruel, selfish, greedy person who's violent, prone to fits of anger, and he drinks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
just like Dad.
No,
I'm just kidding. I had a very loving, very gracious, very kind father.
There's a kind of morbid fascination when the children get into his house.
Mm-hmm.
You know that it's going to be terrible. I mean, I think the first second they step onto his doormat and like the little what's on a front door when the little eye? What's that little hole where your eye look? The people opens and you see his eyes glaring out, and Snicket describes his fiery eyes, and you just know this is going to be.
And he's also just like kind of, he has all these, what's the phrase I'm looking for? These unpleasant, like just physical attributes as well.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He talked about how he has one long eyebrow. He's got a unibrow. No offense if you're a unibrow out there, but Snicket, in the world of Snicket, a unibrow apparently is not something you want to have.
Yeah, he treats it like it's foreign and unnatural. So Count Olaf is like he's like a circus freak or something.
Yes.
He's like not a full human.
Yes.
And he's got like a tattoo of an eye.
He's got a tattoo of an eye, and there are eyes all over his house. Eyes are a big theme throughout the whole thing, and it is like as if, and he says this, like upon meeting Count Olaf, he's got a tattoo of an eye, which becomes a huge part of the series later on. But he says the Baudelaires will always felt like from the moment they stepped into Count Olaf's home, even when he wasn't anywhere to be seen, that he was always watching them. So he's this menacing presence that is felt everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is...
it's like supernatural almost.
Yeah. He's a supernatural villain. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
He is like... Which makes him a great villain.
He's a great character. I mean, initially he forces the children to do a number of chores. He causes them to work long hours, and in a selfish way. Like, he makes them do chores that Olaf himself should be doing. And then he doesn't cook for them. He doesn't give them any money or attention or care. He doesn't really allow them to go out much.
He provides them one bed.
Yeah.
You know, so sleep in.
And then at a certain point, as the story progresses, he becomes physically violent. I think he slaps Klaus on the face once.
He does. Yeah.
He shouts at them and curses at them, and he threatens them with violence. And so it becomes. Here's the plot of the story, and this is where it becomes very interesting, because initially it just seems like what a bad day for them, you know.
Yeah.
But what makes the misfortune in the stories almost bearable, so that it's not just a gut-wrenching depression fest, and that it's not also just a farcical comedy, is that behind the Baudelaire's misery is a plot.
Yes.
This is all happening for a reason, and the reason is Olaf knows that the Baudelaire children will come into a large inheritance, and he wants to get the money. He wants to get their fortune. So he's got to keep them alive, or at least he's got to keep at least one child alive. So he threatens to murder some of them, but never all three of them at the same time. And in each book, he has a new scheme for how he's going to get the money.
Yes, exactly. And that's what the series ultimately becomes, is for a time, eventually it shifts gears. And we can talk more about how just like kind of the roles reverse almost between the Baudelaires and Count Olaf, because it's very interesting. But for the first, I want to say like 8 books or so. 8 books. 8 books of this, which, by the way, props to Daniel Handler / Lemony Snicket for being able to write 13 books. And like, it's 13. It's planned that way. 13 is the unlucky number. And so it is like he planned out
not counting book the 14, which is 1 chapter long, but I remember at the end.
I don't even know about that.
That was a joke. So he throws in a little humor, but yeah, it's 13 books.
Yeah. So he plots out 13, a series that spans 13 novels, and it remains, you know, as with anything, there are some books that are better than others, but by and large, it remains an engaging story all throughout. But for the first 8 books, Count Olaf reappears in the lives of the children, always wearing a different disguise. And this is a theme that we talked about, but of how none of the other adults that are there as guardians over the Baudelaires recognize Count Olaf when he's in his disguise. But the children always know it's him from the word go. As soon as they see him, they're just like, that's Count Olaf.
Yeah, in every book.
Every adult is just like, what? No, it's not. What? His driver's license says it's... yeah.
It's so true.
That's a theme. Like, this is something that he does throughout the series, is just paints adults as like incompetent morons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every adult in the series, almost every adult, is either incompetent or wicked.
Which plays into the whole unfortunate nature of it, because as a child in real life, you should know, you instinctually know if you're a child who's not traumatized, you have 2 parents in the home, a child instinctually knows that adults are supposed to be safe, that adults are meant to be protectors of children. But in the series of unfortunate events, the entire series from book 1 to the end, that security net of having adults like fend for the children, defend them from evil, is like ripped away. And the Baudelaires have to fend for themselves, which is part of what makes the novel so intriguing and so menacing, because they're children. They're like actual children. One of them is an infant, for goodness sakes, and they got to fend for themselves in this world of just wickedness and evil.
Yeah, but it's also empowering, though, because it's the same type of motif as in Peter Pan, wherein the children go to Neverland, and all adults are actually wicked because they're pirates.
Yes.
And so in the novel Peter Pan, the children, it's shocking, but they don't feel threatened or scared. They feel like it's a game.
Yes.
And it's a game because children get to play adults. They get to look after themselves and ultimately mature to the state where they become adults by fending for themselves and learning the lessons that adults need to learn. So this is like a coming of age story, right?
Yeah.
In a series of unfortunate events, it's less like a game, and it's the children don't fly, or there's no Tinkerbell fairy like in Peter Pan.
It's just a bummer.
Yeah, they do fall victim to their so they sink lower and they don't learn to fly, and it's they sink and wallow in their depression. But in their depression, they learn to look after themselves. And, they make a couple of allies, but those connections are short-lived.
Yes. And every time they catch a break, it's just pulled out from under them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we were talking about this, Daniel. It kind of, so circling it around to thinking about it Christianly. So let's talk about this for a second. So you alluded to earlier, Daniel Handler's worldview is not Christian. I believe you said he's an atheist. Yeah. And we were talking last week when we were kind of just discussing and brainstorming about how this book series is very much like a work of postmodernism.
Yeah.
And yet, as with everything in the world God made, it is inescapably, there are inescapable themes that eke in, that are congruent with a biblical worldview and with the truths that are communicated in God's word. So let's talk about this. Like, how does a Christian approach a novel that is just woe after woe after woe and just bad things and really no happy ending at all? Even when the series is over, spoiler alert, there's still really no happy ending. And there's really, again, spoilers, like turn it off. If you want to read the whole thing, don't listen anymore of this. But by the time the whole series is over, there's really not a lot of resolution that occurs. Yeah. So there's also this theme of like meaninglessness in the midst of the suffering. And yet, as you alluded to earlier, the suffering, not even alluded to, you said it, like the suffering builds resilience and character and grows the children into adults, basically, even though they're still children. And I would say that's a biblical theme, that how like Christ is highly exalted now because of the suffering he endured. And in the same way, what does Romans 8 say? It says, we are his children, provided that we suffer with him so that we are also glorified with him. Suffering becomes a necessary part of the Christian life in order to sanctify you and make you more like Christ. No matter what all the false prosperity preachers will tell you, suffering is a necessary component in the Christian life. And in the series of unfortunate events, we see suffering, even though the author sees it as meaningless and pointless and just unending and even something to be scoffed at, because what else can you do but laugh at it? It grows these children into who they ultimately become. So can you talk? So that's my takeaway as far as like, how does a Christian like approach this? But I want to hear your thoughts, like something like this. How do you approach it as a Christian?
Three thoughts. First, Lemony Snicket, the Daniel Handler character, is doing God's work without knowing it. Yes. If you read these books, especially if you can make it all 13 in. They're not too long, they're children's novels, but especially
13 books.
Yeah. Still shorter word count than Harry Potter.
Yes, we actually researched that. Thanks, ChatGPT.
By a couple 100,000 words, still shorter than the Harry Potter series. But if you can make it through book 1, and especially if you can make it through book 13, you'll notice that the way Snicket writes about suffering is filled with heart and filled with sincerity and purpose, and there is meaning in the book. There is absolutely meaning. It matters to the Baudelaires that their parents' memory is honored.
Yeah.
It matters to the Baudelaires that Count Olaf is caught and justice is done.
Yes.
So for all of the author's, freewheeling atheism that's thrown in as a motif throughout the stories, that the mystery is never solved, the Baudelaires never really find their home. Yes. There's no heaven to look forward to, and there's no God to pray to. He doesn't write that way, though.
Yeah.
It's just he doesn't worship the Christian God. So his God, I don't know, maybe it's his own intellect or his own resources. Each of the children represents a skill. Violet is an inventor and an engineer. Klaus is a reader that represents knowledge and learning. And Sunny is a biter, but then she becomes a chef, so she represents the arts. Maybe, I don't know. That's a funny one.
Yeah. Sunny is a very intriguing character.
Yeah, maybe doesn't speak in real words.
Yeah, which is another fun thing that he does, by the way, is like Sunny will say like, goo goo gaga, and then he'll be like, and she meant by that, we got to get out of here.
Yeah. It's so funny. I love it when he does it.
Yeah.
So, the theorists write about that, and they responded in the academy. All the scholars wrote that, and they're saying, "Oh, he's deconstructing language." How brilliant! Sunny's got her own language, and the Baudelaires have their. And the children. It's like every movie with a talking baby.
Yeah.
The children can understand it; the adults can't.
Yeah.
Violet and Klaus always translate for Sunny. Whoa, here's what she meant, and the adults are always going, "She's speaking gibberish."
Yeah. Which plays back into the theme of like only the Baudelaires, only the children really understand what's going on.
Yes, the children are empowered, even in their suffering, even in their isolation from good, morally upright, benevolent adults. They survive on their own.
Yes. Yeah.
So first thought is Lemony Snicket is doing God's work without realizing it.
Yeah. As all atheists do. Like whenever an atheist stands up in the public square and cries for justice, he's doing the work of the Lord.
Yeah, where did that justice come from?
Yeah.
Where did the concept originate in your mind? It doesn't make sense if human beings are the result of undirected genetic mutation and natural selection. There shouldn't be these ethical, metaphysical, spiritual concepts of good and evil.
What does it matter if a culture perverts justice and punishes the innocent? What does it matter if we're here by accident? Yeah.
But then the second thought I'd say is there's another way in which the series of unfortunate events can be read in tandem with Scripture, with a little discernment, of course.
Yes.
And that is that, so the Baudelaires are suffering like miserably. And they say things, and the narrator, Lemony Snicket, says things which are wrong.
Yes.
And so you might feel guilty as a Christian. I'm reading a secular book, and it's saying things like, the world is meaningless, and there's no point to life. Something that's patently untrue.
Yes.
But so does the psalmist. The psalmist talks that way, and he says, "Why, O God, have you forgotten me?" Remember Psalm 42?
Yes.
All your breakers and your waves have passed over me. Now, the psalmist knows that God hasn't forgotten him.
Yeah.
He knows that, but it's what it feels like in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And Job, the book of Job,
Yes.
is a good parallel book to read with a series of unfortunate
Yeah.
events.
Yeah.
Because Job's friends are like the adults who come into the children's lives in the Baudelaire story and tell them, you wicked children. Remember, there's those adults who are like, you disobedient children.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
speaking
yeah,
out
yeah.
of turn. When
Yeah,
they're trying
yeah.
to say, look, Count
Yeah,
Olaf's
yeah.
over there.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they say,
yeah.
don't interrupt,
Yep.
And it's like, come on, man. And you're almost reminded of Job's friends who, when he,
That's a good point. I
he
never
suffers,
thought about that.
he suffers so extremely. And the friends come up and say, did you go to church last week? Like you sinner, you deserve this. And
If you had, maybe you didn't give your 10%.
yeah. It's like, come on. We all know that's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said a minute ago, there's a plot behind it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the Baudelaires are suffering is for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like with Job. The reason Job is suffering is there's a plot behind it. That's what makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The plot here is Olaf trying to get the fortune. So it's not a... Snicket doesn't write the Baudelaire suffering as if it's a divine, redemptive, historical story arc,
Yeah.
But still, we can spot that as a Christian and say, okay, their suffering's not meaningless.
Yes.
An enemy has done this.
Yes.
So that's my second thought. And then third, and maybe finally, is even in the passages of the book that are explicitly, I'll just say atheistic, although at no point in the book is there ever a sentence, there is no God.
Yeah.
He doesn't write that way.
But you can discern it through the pages of the novel that Daniel Handler, the author, views suffering in an unchristian way.
Yeah. The statements that exist in the stories are like this. There's no hope in the world. There's no answer to your questions. There's no meaning to suffering.
Yes.
And if you survive this present misfortune, you're only living to encounter another one tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there's really ultimately no safe haven from it all. Life is a series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes. And he probably thinks he's doing children a service in this. And in a way he is, because preparing children for a life of hardship and misery is actually a worthy cause. And it's something we should do as parents if we were parents. Like, I would want to prepare my children for the injustice of this world.
Yeah.
But we do not suffer as those without hope, and that's where he misses the mark.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we prepare our children for suffering by telling them there's a king
Exactly.
serve who is the victory belongs to him.
Exactly.
But so it's a fiction story. It's part of the aesthetic. But so those more pronounced passages, they come particularly at the end of the series.
Yeah.
You're not going to get much of that in books 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
The world is meaningless.
Yeah.
You're going to get the sense of it from the plot events that happen. Like, oh man, they're in the hole again.
Yep.
But he says it more explicitly in like books 10, books 11, 12, 13, etc.
Yeah.
Even a Christian can read those passages and delight in them because you can see the flaw in his argument and thank God that it is not that way. And C.S. Lewis said this once in his book, An Experiment in Criticism, that it's a delight to enter into other men's minds even if we find them depraved. Milton in Paradise Lost spends entire passages describing Satan's internal dialogue. Why on earth would a Christian read Satan's internal...
Why on earth would a Christian write internal dialogue?
And the answer is, C.S. Lewis writes the Screwtape Letters. Same basic idea.
Yeah.
Why should we enter into the mindset of a sinful, reprobate philosophy that we know is wrong?
Yeah.
And the answer is, God is sovereign there too. And it's, I don't know how to articulate it, but there's a peculiar delight to, from afar and with balance and discernment, viewing error and seeing that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that I don't submit to that and fall prey to that. Another thing, one more thought.
Oh, go for it.
Is while I believe, and this is my personal interpretation, people disagree with me, but I think you can't write 13 books and not at least betray a sliver of sincerity. I get that the books are a joke and that the 13, children going from one guardian to another and Olaf always finds them. I get that that's a shtick. And it is funny. The book don't get me wrong.
The books are a romp.
From start to finish too. Even in the end when it's like he's becoming more, pronounced in his atheism. It's still funny.
Yeah.
So there's a sense in which this is all a farce. And that even makes it even more cruel because here's legitimate suffering happening in this fictional domain. And the author is painting it as so over the top and hyperbolic that it's like dark humor. That is, I think, connected with his atheism too, because he writes like the French author Albert Camus, who wrote The Plague and The Stranger.
Yes.
And Albert Camus, whose philosophy was called absurdism, which is that life is meaningless, so to even contemplate one's own existence involves the mental process called absurdity.
Yeah.
And any understanding that you have is an absurd understanding of your own existence. And so the stories are absurd.
Yeah.
Like Olaf disguises himself and it's like, we know it's you, and none of the adults spot it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And they go in a submarine and they climb up a mountain and they all of this crazy stuff. And you're thinking, this is wild. So it's comic book-esque.
It is absurdist
to
a certain degree. And it is like, I wrote this in my notes. It has a sense of realism, but the world is obviously fantasy. It's obviously a fantastical world. It obviously, it's absurd.
Yeah. And it reminds me of another novel by Thomas Pynchon, which is called The Crying of Lot 49.
Yes, this is good. You told me this last week, yeah.
Yeah, best-selling novel, The Crying of Lot 49. It's only a couple hundred pages, and it's a staple of postmodern literature. I think it came out in the 60s. And it's the story of a female protagonist whose name is Oedipa.
Already, we're off to a bad start.
A slight variant of the word Oedipus.
Oh, I didn't even put that together. But good point.
It's spelled like that.
I was just like, that's a terrible name to have. I was just like, what a horrible place to be.
A feminized version of the Greek word Oedipus, which is from the Sophocles play, which is also a story of a man who undergoes almost absurd, ridiculous suffering. And it's not really his fault. And so anyway, this woman, Oedipa, in the novel, The Crying of Lot 49, sees some message on the back of a postage stamp, and she is then launched into a huge conspiracy, which half the time she doesn't know if it's true, and half the time she doesn't know if she's hallucinating or if it's real. And she encounters bankers and prostitutes and former military personnel and all these secret characters who tell her about a mass conspiracy involving the government, involving a war, and in each new chapter, she uncovers a little bit more of the conspiracy. She meets a radio announcer, and then she meets a really successful businessman, and they're all feeding this narrative to her, but they don't give her the whole story. They only give her a fragment, and she's led to the next house and to the next place, and it ultimately builds to this climax where the answers to her questions are to be found at an auction.
Yes.
And in Lot 49, whatever that is, she doesn't know, contained inside Lot 49 is a document that will reveal the answers to all of her questions. So she sits there waiting, and as she's sitting in the auction room, the suspense builds because she starts to recognize characters from previous chapters, and I don't know, I've never been to an auction. The person crying the lots, saying lot
49, go run, go try.
So they're getting to lot 30 and lot 35 and then lot 40, and then she's reflecting on the story. This is the final chapter of the book. I'm going to give the spoiler away because it's too good. And she's recapping her journey, and she's thinking, I must be hallucinating. I must be insane. If this is real, then the story she's potentially uncovering would be a paradigm shift in history. This huge mass conspiracy. And then Lot 49 is called, and 46 and 47. And then finally, the novel ends with a sentence that's something to the effect of, she sat there considering all these things awaiting the crying of Lot 49. And then it ends. And there's no sequel.
And you're just like, what?
So the point of the book is the author has created this cloud of confusion and suspense and intrigue, and then has deliberately refrained from giving you the answer.
Yes.
I think Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events, is that for children's fiction. It is that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that there's zero answer. It's not as blatant and bold-faced as Thomas Pynchon's postmodern novel is.
Yeah.
But A Series of Unfortunate Events is postmodern literature for kids.
Yes.
It's there. Hey, there's a conspiracy with Olaf. You know, there's a whole team of people who were involved in burning down your parents' mansion, and then they meet this other group of orphan children, the Quagmires, and they have a history, and their parents knew the Baudelaire's parents. And then there's adults. Some adults know who Count Olaf is because he was part of a secret organization in the past. And then the Quagmires give the Baudelaires their notebooks, but hey, there's a catch. The notebooks are damaged while they're handing them off, and they only get little scraps of paper. And the scraps of paper have acronyms on them, and the acronyms could stand for any number of certain definitions. And then they meet other characters who look like they're allies, but then they change halfway through and become villains. And it's almost exhausting to read through every story, and the conspiracy enlarges and the suspense expands, and then not to give away the whole spoiler, but at the end, there is no answer. And Snicket says it explicitly in the book. He says, no mystery is ever solved. That's a quote, Lemony Snicket. No mystery is ever solved fully.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with that as a Christian? Is that, so first of all, it's probably a certain type of person with a certain taste in literature who can stand that. Most people roll their eyes.
Yeah.
But for the person who's likes mysteries and then gets to the end of it and goes, "Ah, man, you didn't solve the mystery." What's the takeaway? The takeaway is that's the product of a human mind. A human came up with that. And you know what? In God's kingdom, there is an answer to all of the Baudelaire suffering.
Yes.
And that is all meaningful.
Yeah.
The attempt on the part of the author to make it seem like the Baudelaire suffering is meaningless is a thin veil that every reader can see through.
Yes.
It's a game you choose to participate in to get to the end of 13 books and say, yeah, you're right, it was meaningless. Like you're as much part of the fiction then as the Baudelaire children are.
Yeah.
Everybody can know it. So it's pleasing and intriguing and worth the time as a Christian to see the subtlety of human invention and human artificiality to paste onto a series of unfortunate events a final conclusive decree. This is meaningless, when your heart will be beating all 13 books knowing this isn't meaningless. I know the truth. Count Olaf was plotting this all along. The parents left messages for the children. This was going to happen, and it reflects God's providence.
And the fact that you want stories that end that way, where there is no resolution, are inherently unsatisfying. Now, granted, this is a little bit different because he's just such a gifted writer, and he writes in such a way that by the time the story ends, you're left being like, it couldn't have ended any other way. But you're still left slightly unsatisfied.
Very unsatisfying.
If I recall correctly, the last book, it's been years since I've read the whole series, but the last book, which is simply titled The End,
I know, isn't that great?
it ends on a cliffhanger of sorts, does it not?
It does. You never know what happens.
You never know what happens after the last book. There's no real resolution.
It's a non-resolution.
It's just kind of left open-ended. And there's a reason stories like that, whether it's a book or a movie or what have you, are unsatisfying. It's because we know inherently in our hearts, as you said, life has meaning and there is an answer. You talked about how Lemony Snicket says, like, I don't know, should we call him Lemony? Should we call him Liberty, or should we call him Lemony Snicket, or should we call him Daniel Handler? I don't even know.
Again, this is the nerd take.
Yeah.
You call him Lemony Snicket when he's performing in his character persona.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Daniel Handler didn't write a series of unfortunate events. Lemony Snicket did.
Yeah.
Because he maintains character throughout.
Gotcha.
If in even one paragraph he had slipped and said, oh, okay, you guys get it, the Lemony Snicket's a character.
yeah.
It's really Daniel Handler here. Okay, hi.
yeah.
Okay, bye. If he had even for one paragraph let that break, then you'd have to say, okay, this is Handler writing as Snicket, writing as the Baudelaire, you know.
Yeah.
But because he maintains it the entire time, it's like, that's Snicket's work.
Which, like, what a champ, by the way. Despite my disagreements with his worldview, like, you gotta give props to this guy.
And some people find him annoying. I liked it. You know, I like I said earlier, when I was a kid, I loved, there was something about breaking the narration to have a little time with free indirect discourse, just you and the author. I loved it. Was like, it was like a pillow. It cushioned the narrative. Yeah. Whereas, like in a Harry Potter story, there's no, it's story endlessly.
Yes.
Just next paragraph, Ron's doing something, and then Harry's doing something.
Yeah.
But
What kind of writing style is that? Where the narrator is basically like omnipotent and is just giving you what is that called?
Omniscient.
Omniscience. Yeah, but he's just giving you the story, but he's not. But it's this faceless entity that is just revealing the story.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's just a third person narrative voice.
Yes.
Like who's telling us Harry Potter?
Like
no one.
No one.
It's just
no one.
just a voice is coming from the ether. You know, it's a documented text.
Yes. Yeah.
But I liked it's more relational. You know,
Yes.
there's you know, think Moby Dick we talked about a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
That book, because there's so little plot, it's really just you hanging out with the character Ishmael, the narrator, for 700 pages.
And there's different narrators, is there not, in Moby Dick?
I think it's only one.
Well, there's Ishmael, and then there's Ishmael and his perspective on it, and then there's like an omnipotent narrator who like sees everything, and it switches between the two perspectives, does it not?
No, it's Ishmael from start to finish.
Oh,
there are chapters where there are monologues of like Starbuck and Stubb and other members of the crew, Ahab perhaps, but it's Ishmael from start to finish, and that's the point. You're only getting the story from his perspective.
Gotcha. Well, this isn't about Moby Dick though.
No. But my point was it's to your taste. It's what you find appealing in your literary palette. But I loved the free indirect discourse from the narrator. Just like, by the way, you know, I didn't treat those that actually built the suspense for me.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I can't describe it. It was like we were in a room together and he was talking to me, and I just love that. You know, for a person who never read any books before, it was like, wow, this guy's talking to me. This is cool. I didn't know books could do that.
I have a friend.
Yeah. You know, whereas if you just read a straight third person narrated, omniscient, you know, distanced text, you kind of feel like, I'm not really here. You know, but so Snicket speaks to you directly, and he does speak to you directly because he treats you as like in on it. I think he even says on the back of every book, like, please, I've left this document to you to try to report the story of the Baudelaires. I put it in your hands. You know, he's like entrusting you with this information. And then that's not even starting all of the merchandise that he, you know, he writes his autobiography. Then.
Which is just, let's talk about the autobiography for just a moment.
Just one moment.
It's nothing. It's literally, I had it. It's like a bunch of photocopies about scraps of paper with information that is meaningless. It's like blurred photographs. And it's just like,
hilarious.
There is no autobiography, and it's all part of the joke. He's playing a joke on all of us, but if you choose to pick up all 13 books and read them, you eventually realize, oh, this is all just a game that we're playing together, and we're all part of the conspiracy.
It's the same thing with the Beatrice letters, which I also read. When I was a kid, and I kind of still feel this way, but not so much. But when I was growing up reading them, I felt I got that the mystery. So when I read all 13 books, I got the mystery isn't solved. Okay, great. It deliberately left open-ended. But my teenage brain always thought, man, okay, if I could just read this series one more time, I bet I could piece all the pieces together. Like there's enough there that you feel like it's substantial, and you could sort this out.
Yeah. But he purposely, that's the thing about the series, is that he purposefully withholds any actual revelation from you. The entire series is building up a mystery that is purposefully left cloudy and unsolved, which goes back to my original point of like why those why those stories are unsatisfying is because we know as Christians, like, mysteries are meant to be revealed. Like, God has revealed himself, and the end goal of all of the human experience is found in the lordship of Jesus Christ and his redemption of the entire earth, and a people redeemed for his pleasure and for his enjoyment, worshiping him for all eternity. There is an end goal for all of our lives, assuming we repent and turn to Christ for forgiveness of our sins. There is an end goal for all of our lives that makes everything we experience here and now meaningful. And Paul even says in his letters about how the mystery of the Gentiles has been revealed, that was kept hidden in previous ages from the people of God. So the mystery that it's not just Jews, but Gentiles as well are grafted into the people of God. The people of God is a multiplicitous people from every tribe, nation, and tongue. Every people group will be represented in the ultimate final consummation of the kingdom of God. And this was a mystery that is now revealed. So God's purpose, his pleasure, is to reveal things that have been hidden and obscured. And we talked about the parables a few weeks back, or a few episodes back. We're releasing these on a monthly basis. We keep saying weeks, but we're going to release them on a monthly basis. It was years ago on a yearly basis. So see you in 2026.
Can you imagine?
But a few episodes back, we talked about the parables of Jesus and how they purposely obscure for some people, but for others, they bring you deeper into relationship with him so that the meaning of the parables and what they mean about the kingdom is revealed. So mysteries are meant to be revealed. So when we're left with a story that is full of mystery, that is unsolved and not revealed, we're left unsatisfied because we know that mysteries are meant to be uncovered and revealed. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the mystery not being revealed at the end of the series isn't too unbearable for a number of reasons. One, that's not the only thing he talks about in the stories. You go through these experiences with they're great novels in and of themselves, I think. But also, you can kind of see it coming a little bit. You know, it's not the first sentence. You know, if you're interested in stories with happy ending, you'd be better off reading something else. You probably know what he's doing. I don't think it's a waste of time. It grows and develops that facet of your imagination. And especially for kids to read, I think they could probably read something better than this, but they could also read something worse than this.
Yeah. It's an extremely well-written, well-told story. All the philosophical, philosophical disagreements aside, it's just a fun story to read. And the Baudelaires are interesting and they're likable, and you have an immense amount of sympathy for them.
Yes. They're morally sensitive, polite, caring, loyal, intelligent, determined, strong, admirable characters.
Yes.
And also the characters who side with the Baudelaires, few though they be, are also honorable and noble characters. And the book praises nobility.
Yes.
The book praises certain, character traits and certain certain archetypal ideas like reading and studying.
That was something that I realized when I was prepping my notes. I realized books are a huge thing for Lemony Snicket throughout the entire. Books are like a source of salvation almost.
Yeah.
But even in the first book, we're going to see it is a book that ultimately helps the Baudelaires thwart the initial plot of Count Olaf in A Bad Beginning. So let's do this, Daniel.
We've been talking about the series all the time. We
haven't even talked about Bad Beginning. We're like an hour into this. We're
That's
not. But so we got in the philosophy and the theology. We've kind of created a framework for how Christians should approach a novel like this. But part of what we do here on the Eternal Library is we talk about how we kind of model and discuss how to enjoy a book. So let's talk about things we actually like about the first book, The Bad Beginning. So you go ahead.
Okay. Oh man, I'll I'll be honest, guys. This is one of my favorite novel series.
Yeah. You may have gotten the impression this entire time that we absolutely despise this series, but that's not true. We both thoroughly enjoy this series.
I've read this novel series more times than I can count. Maybe like all 13 books, maybe I've read it 6 or 7 times.
Really?
But it's more than that because
Really?
I've dipped in to individual books and then not read cover to cover all 13. So that's why I don't know what the number
You're
is.
an insane person.
I know, and I feel guilty saying that. I actually feel kind of embarrassed because they're not. This isn't a masterpiece of world literature. You know, it's Snickett's masterpiece because he didn't write anything else that's as good as this. But it's like the writing sometimes is a little flat. Sometimes the goofiness is too, far-fetched, and then there's this ultimate atheist message. So that's why I said you could read something better than this,
It's not The Hobbit. It's not Narnia, it's not Moby Dick,
Yeah, I'm mentioning this alongside with Robinson Crusoe and Paradise Lost and like books that are like feasts for your soul, lots of protein, like good stuff in there. And this is more like candy. I just read this and I'm like, this is just fun for me. So
but there's a place for that, right? You need your protein. Right? You need your protein to grow big and strong. But
don't tell me you need sugar. That's so bad.
No, you need... how good is a bowl of ice cream on a hot summer's day?
And good for you.
Yeah.
No.
Like good for... Well, maybe not nutritionally, but how much joy does it bring to your soul?
I
just have a bowl of ice cream.
I do love ice cream.
We love ice cream a lot here at the Eternal Library. Just don't bring it into the library.
It can't come in the library.
It can't come into the library.
We can talk about it.
The librarian will get you. The librarian will confiscate your ice cream.
Lots of ice cream may come and go in our heads, but not through the doorway.
But all of that, only ice cream will own. I can't do it. I was trying to do
No, but especially people who love to read books. You always have a book that's kind of just like candy at the end of the day. And so his sentences aren't as beautiful as that of Marcel Proust. His vocabulary isn't as wide and diverse as Coleridge. His themes aren't as rich as Hawthorne or, but I like it. I just happen to like these ones.
And there's a place for that. There's a place for that.
So that being said, I could, like, what do you want? I could tell you anything. Down to even just opening the first page, I like the illustrations.
Oh yeah, there's, by the way, Brett Hellquist, the man who illustrated all 13 books, illustrations at the start of every chapter. There's also like cover art, and there's a little, what do you call that thing when it's like
above the chapter? Or?
No. When it's like I guess a folio, like this thing. Like,
the opening full page illustration.
Full page illustration.
There's always like 3 of those in every book. There's a full page artwork by the illustrator.
Brett Hellquist does amazing work with all the illustrations. So shout out Brett. Brett, if you want to come on the podcast, we'll have you have your people contact our people, and we'll chop it up.
Everyone's invited.
Everyone's invited.
Okay, so maybe what comes first to mind, although I could list a dozen things. What comes first to mind is I like the world.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. So it doesn't take place in any known city. It's in a fictional town.
And it's also it's the time period is a little...
Dude, what time period is it? I don't even know.
It doesn't matter.
It's like, there's weird references made to things that are anachronistic. Or they're outside of time.
Yeah.
And you go, well, when are we then? And... so I like the world. I love the conspiracy. And I always felt when I was reading these books and opening the covers again and going back to them, that I was going back into that room, that conspiracy, that frame of mind. Snicket writes in a way where small enclosed spaces become centers for deep critical analysis and profound philosophical problems and expressions of pain and suffering. And so that's one facet of it that I liked. And then another thing is Snicket's peculiarness, like his oddness, his quirkiness. I always just found some kind of truth in that. I just thought, this guy's writing with a great mind. You know when you find a film director who just shoots things rightly?
Yes.
And they're not even good story. You don't even like what he's photographing.
Yeah.
But you just go, man, that guy has good style. Like
Yeah.
the camera was right.
Yes.
I've always felt that way with Snicket.
Yeah.
But they're children's novels, and I used to write this when I was a teenager. I write in my journals. I'd be like, I want Snicket to write an adult novel because that would be the best.
I don't know if it'd be good.
No,
honestly.
he did, and it was terrible.
Oh yeah. So point proven. Yeah.
Lemony Snicket, not Daniel Handler, but in character persona, Lemony Snicket wrote an adult novel just a few years ago called Poison for Breakfast.
What a already we're off to a great start.
And I was so excited to read it, and I'm going to be a little critical here. This is my personal opinion. It's a fine book. You can read it if you like. There's nothing wrong with it. I hated it.
It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can read it, but you suck.
No. Yeah. Poison for Breakfast by Lemony Snicket was the first adult novel. And it doesn't have anything to do with the Baudelaires. And that's not why I disliked it, by the way. It's like, where's Violet and Klaus?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was that the whole book was like some postmodern, like meta narrative that the story was about itself.
Yeah. He'd kind of achieved his final form. Yeah.
It was way too much. And he definitely leaned into the, what's the word? The snarky, petulant, presumptuous, like dangling a mystery in front of your face and then going, oh, but there was never any answer to it all along, you fool. Don't you know that life is absurd? And it was like, come on, I'm reading your book.
How silly of you to expect an answer.
Yeah. And it's a very self-serving, pat myself on the back type philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, I know the answer to the universe. And
and I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah. And it's like, don't you know that there is no meaning? And it's like, that's not so cute after a while when you don't provide me with the service of telling me a great story.
Yeah.
So that's why I think to date, A Series of Unfortunate Events is the best thing that he's written. And I would say that includes Daniel Handler's fiction, just the man. I've read a couple of his books too, and they weren't to my taste. But A Series of Unfortunate Events allows him to express his atheistic sentiments while at the same time serving readers very well with an elaborate plot, with compelling and memorable characters, and with this quirky like aesthetic and and the world and the adventures they go on. I always felt too. Oh, here's one more thing. I'm talking too much, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah.
I always felt like in the moments when the Baudelaires are truly suffering, Snicket, the narrator, writes with authenticity and sympathy towards them. That it's like the joke, the volume on the jokiness, it gets turned down.
Yeah.
And they're crying one night alone in an abandoned hospital. And another night they're in jail. And it's one of the children's birthdays that night, but nobody's there for them. In another night, they're in a submarine and one of the children looks like they'll die. And they're just so hopeless that they just start sobbing. And I don't know if I was like a morbid teen or something, but I just thought that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like that's so, like, there's something profound about it. I just thought that's so deep, that's so powerful to me.
Even though he thinks life is meaningless, and even though he thinks that the suffering has no purpose, ultimately he shows his hand. He shows that he actually does believe in a God by showing that real suffering is worthy of our sympathy and worthy of our empathy. Yeah.
What did you like in it? What comes to mind?
Okay, So Bad Beginning specifically, we'll get into like specific quotes and specific scenes. But the series as a whole, as we said, Klaus, Sonny, Violet, the children who are the main characters, the protagonists, they're very likable. They're very sympathetic. You feel for them. You want good things to happen to them. You want it to end well for them, even though he tells you all throughout the series it's not going to happen. You want them to prosper. And so they're good protagonists. But I'm going to be honest with you. They're not why I read the books.
Is it the Baudelaires?
I know what you're going to say. I'm not there for the Baudelaires.
I think I know what you're going to say.
I'm there for Count Olaf. Every single book, every single scene that Count Olaf is in, I'm just like, Yeah.
Yeah, I'm noticing a trend in The Hobbit. Your favorite chapter was the one with the goblins. Now you like Count Olaf.
That has always been, like, when I watched The Lion King as a kid, Scar was my favorite character. Like, when I saw Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, when she turns into the dragon, that's the best part of the movie.
Favorite part of Star Wars is Darth Vader.
But actually,
Yeah.
Phantom Menace, Darth Maul, 2 lightsabers, double wielding. Like, are you kidding me? That's the coolest part of the movie.
I'm noticing a trend.
I wear it. I wear that badge unashamedly. I'm a villain guy. I love a good villain.
Oh, it's good.
Thanos, like, forget about it. I'm there. I'm watching Infinity War for Thanos. I'm there for the snap, y'all. I don't condone it. I don't believe in that kind of philosophy, but I'm down to watch a scary villain do scary things.
Sean's cheering on the dark side.
Maybe just a little bit. But Count Olaf is one of the greatest literary villains of all time.
He's good.
He is so interesting.
He's larger than life.
We didn't touch on this, but he has this menagerie of henchmen behind him who are just like Muppets. Like there's a man in his employ who has hooks for hands. There's a man. Maybe a man. There's a
man who looks like neither a woman nor a man.
There's a creature, an androgynous thing that looks like neither a man nor a woman. There's 2 pale, white-faced women who are in his employ. There's a man with a giant, bulbous nose, and every single one of them is just as wicked.
Isn't there also a guy with warts all over his face?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a whole cast of characters, and they're like depicted as circus freaks.
Yeah.
Or like, this is the modern version of the monster. This is like the Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo.
Yes.
Where the modern monster isn't Grendel or a dragon. It's a what society would call a deformed human being. But it's just a person who's abnormal.
Yes. And at the center of them all is Count Olaf, who doesn't have like any physical deformity that we know of. But he is just like abnormal. Mm-hmm. And he is almost subhuman in a way, in his cruelty and in his malice and in his hatred of the Baudelaires.
Yeah. He's like a type of monster.
Yeah, his total disregard for children who he should be protecting. He hates the kids. He hates them so much, and he doesn't even hide it. Like a lot of villains in stories, they kind of cover up their wickedness, and it's only revealed at the end how wicked they are. Not so with Count Olaf. From the very beginning, it's just like, this guy is evil. But he's at the same time menacing. He's terrifying. As we said, his presence permeates the whole novel. Every time he is in a scene with the children, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially in the first book when we first meet him, we don't know what he's capable of yet.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
He's terrifying.
Yeah. And they're locked in his house, and they can't get away.
Locked in his house. At one point, he takes Sunny, the infant, the baby, and he locks her in a cage and dangles her out of the tower. That is, by the way, he lives in a house with a giant turret.
Like, it's like Count Dracula.
Like Count Dracula. Or he takes Sunny and he locks her in his tower like a friggin' dragon.
Oh, that's true.
And so he does these horrible, evil things, and yet he's so interesting, and he's also like kind of funny. As the books progress, remember in book 10 when he's like the captain of the submarine, and he's wearing
11.
like that. 11, the Grim Grotto, right? And he's wearing like he's got like a sea captain's outfit on. He's got like fake medals,
patches,
like little patches.
He's won in war.
And he's just like got a sword, and he's just like Avast or whatever. Like, he's hilarious, and he like becomes more and more despicable, and yet more and more silly as the novels progress. And I just think about like how he's such a sassy pants. He's such a sassy
I've never heard anyone describe Count Olaf as a sassy pants.
I'm going to give you an example. In page 104 of the Bad...
This time we both have the same edition, so I can follow along.
Yeah, so page 104, after he's locked Sunny up in his tower, and he tells Violet and Klaus, I got your sister up in this tower.
Oh, yeah.
He takes them outside, and he's like, oh, your sister's out here, come. And he takes them out into the backyard of his house, and they're looking around. They're like, well, where is she? And he's just like, you're not looking in the right place, Count Olaf said. For children who read so much, you two are remarkably unintelligent. And then he points up, and they look up, they see Sunny locked in the tower. But like,
he's just dangling it in front of him.
He's just dangling it in front of him. And by the way, we haven't even talked about the plot of the bad beginning and what his scheme is to get the fortune from the Baudelaires. Do you want to talk about what he comes up with?
It's an old plot, and so this is also what makes it funny in a postmodern context, is there are so many Spanish tragedies and Shakespeare plays where the villain plots to achieve his own ends by marrying somebody.
Yes.
It's the old marriage plot. Yeah, it's been done 1,000 times. This time with a little twist, Count Olaf, in order to attain the Baudelaire's fortune, is going to marry Violet, but he's going to do it in a sneaky way, in such that he's going to put on a play and not tell anyone that the play is, involving a real justice of the peace, involving signatures and actual marital documents from the courthouse. He's going to put on a play about a marriage, but the marriage will be real because it'll be legally binding with all the paperwork there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this plot is the children uncover it.
Yes.
He never, like a bad villain, monologues about it to them.
Yeah.
He keeps it a secret.
Yeah.
But the children uncover it because they're resourceful and intelligent,
Yes.
and Klaus stays up all night reading. And
A book on nuptial law. So again, books are like the hero in a lot of ways, and the knowledge that you attain from books is what saves the day. Whereas Count Olaf despises reading, he despises books. He's like the opposite of the Baudelaires in so many ways. And everything that is virtuous in the eyes of Lemony Snicket, Count Olaf is not that.
Yes.
He's not very intelligent in an academic sense, but he's clever. And
Yes,
he's
clever.
sneaky and he's malicious. He's not well read, but he is just a schemer. And he can come up with conniving just ways to just thwart the Baudelaires. And he's got a new disguise. Every single book, he knows how to disguise himself and pull the wool over people's eyes. He knows how to manipulate people. Yeah,
absolutely.
Which makes him all the more terrifying because every single adult he comes across falls under his spell in a sense, and he is able to fool everyone into doing his bidding except for the Baudelaires.
Yeah.
And so he's powerful and he's dangerous for that reason because he's able to take the world of the adults that is supposed to be a safe place for children and turn it against them. So he's a terrifying villain.
Yeah.
And I freaking love it. Yeah. Do you want to talk about, so he, in the scheme of the book, he gets his neighbor, who is a real life justice of the peace, to perform a marriage ceremony in this play that it's revealed he himself wrote, where Violet is playing the bride, but it's in a play setting, but the justice of the peace with a real marriage document performs a wedding in the world of the play.
Air quotes, wedding.
Yeah. And then in this way, Count Olaf is going to marry Violet and then have a right to
her money.
Her money.
Her inheritance.
You want to talk about how the Baudelaires thwart it? How it ultimately again, spoilers.
Sean would like me to tell you now that the reason the Baudelaires triumph over Olaf is not that Violet does not say I do, and it's not that Violet does not sign the marriage certificate. She does.
She does.
In front of a live audience with the justice of the peace, in front of witnesses, with Count Olaf there also saying I do and signing his name. So even though the Baudelaires know what's happening and they know that the play, the fake fictional story is actually real, they go through it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's because Violet has presumably found a loophole, and the loophole is the biggest plot hole in Snicket's novel.
Yeah.
And it is that Violet signs the marriage document with her left hand instead of her right hand.
And she is right-handed.
Thus invalidating her, presumed marriage to Count Olaf.
Which I looked it up. That doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Please do not marry someone. Whoever's listening to this, please don't sign with your other hand and think that you're off the hook.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah, if
you married him.
If you're in a situation where you're gonna marry someone who you don't want to marry, first of all, don't do that. First of all, just don't marry him. But if you do go through with it, don't try to sign with your non-dominant hand.
Yeah, and then go, it's invalid.
It doesn't work. But in the world of Lemony Snicket, in this fantasy world he's created, that's all it takes to overcome Olaf, which is just, it gets down to the silliness of the whole thing. It's joke.
Possible. It's possible that I think Justice Strauss at one point, they ask her, because the first reaction of all the witnesses is, no, and Olaf himself says, that doesn't matter. She signed it. And then they give the paper to like Justice Strauss, and she says something like, no, it's true. She isn't married. And then a commotion ensues, and the powers shut off, and Olaf escapes.
Yes.
I used to think, okay, because, that's a pretty lousy ending. Yeah. But, okay, maybe it's this. Maybe Justice Strauss lied. And because, I tried to find a technicality to get Snicket off the hook here. Because this is probably the weakest ending. Yeah. Like, that's unbelievable that Violet could get it. So I thought, well, maybe it's not about that. It's about creating a commotion and a diversion in order to kidnap Olaf and imprison him for creating the fake play to begin with. Yeah. So I don't know. You can interpret it the way you like. Yeah.
I think it's just like a dumb, silly thing that Snicket came up with to fit into this fantasy world that he's made. I think that's more the
great plot, though. Yeah. The plot. Another thing I love about the first book is it's the perfect novel. It's perfectly timed. Yes. The character, it's never slow, but it doesn't always contain scenes of overt action. Yeah. It's not slow, but there are some chapters where the plot is boiling. Yeah. And they're stuck inside the house with Olaf. He's thinking of something, but they haven't figured it out yet. Yeah. And he's giving them little hints and little clues, but he's not revealing it. And they go to visit Mr. Poe, and Mr. Poe's no help. It's like, well, what a wasted chapter. It's not a wasted chapter. It heightens the suspense. Yes. Because they know they can't call him anymore. Yes. They are on their own. Yes. And then they go to the next door neighbor. She's so nice. She also can't help them. Yes. And you just feel this claustrophobic sense of impending danger. And it escalates until, I think Violet is up all night one night thinking of how to escape. And she creates like a grappling hook. A grappling hook. Thank you. Yeah. And Violet is up all night reading one
Klaus,
night.
You mean.
Or, sorry. Yeah. Violet is up with the grappling hook. Klaus is up reading.
All three of the children use their skills at one point to help them out of danger.
Yeah, and they don't even fully know what it is yet. And that's more intriguing and suspenseful all the time while they're locked in Olaf's house and this menacing presence is right with them. Yeah. It's so interesting. The narrator of The Bad Beginning is the least whimsical and snarky. In other words, it's the thinnest of all the novels. So he has the least amount of time to insert his own discourse. Yeah. So if you want straight plot, your best shot is The Bad Beginning. Yeah. Especially by the time you get to book 10, there are I would almost say whole chapters where nothing happens, where it's just Snicket talking to you, which I loved. I ate that stuff up. But The Bad Beginning is so neat. Yeah. It's so tidy. It's a perfect script, Yeah. So I like that aspect too. Yeah. I love the mystery overhanging the Baudelaires. There's the night they make the puttanesca sauce.
Oh, yes.
It's like this little mini one-off episode because it's just about them doing chores for that night. And then they make the pasta and it doesn't go well. He wanted roast beef and then he slaps Klaus and you think, okay, that's the end of that episode. Yeah. But that chapter ends with one of the henchmen, I think it's the hook-handed man, saying, if I know you right, Olaf, you're going to try to find a way to get your hands on that fortune. And then he says, we'll see. And the chapter ends. Yeah. So just those two sentences. Yeah. And you think, oof. And then it's just boiling. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's this plot that is building and building and building. And they try so many different ways to overcome it. Like they try to threaten Olaf and try to go to the police, and he's like, they'll never believe you. And they're right, they never will. They won't believe them because adults just don't listen to children in this world. And then it's ultimately all thwarted by the most seemingly inconsequential thing, by the most what's the phrase? By the most, I can't think of the word.
It's like unbelievable.
Unexpected way. She signs the document with her non-dominant hand. Yeah, and that's all it takes after this entire saga of them just this little tug of war they're doing with Olaf, where he's gonna get them, but they're gonna escape. And they every time they take one step forward in terms of escaping him, they get two steps back. And then finally, all they do, Violet signs with her left hand, and it's over. And they win for that book. But then even when the book ends, it's still a bummer of an ending.
Of course.
Yeah. Because it wouldn't be a series of unfortunate events.
It may be perhaps the finest moment in the whole novel, The Bad Beginning, when they have uncovered the plot and Violet signed with her left hand and a commotion ensues and the power's cut out. And in the chaos, Violet, I think, is reaching for the light switch.
I was going to mention this, but I'm glad you're doing it.
And well, I mean, you know what happens.
Yeah.
Olaf, she hears a voice whisper in her ear, like, "I'm gonna find you and kill you, and I'm gonna kill your children." And it's so it sends chills down your spine when you read it. It's as if Snicket removed the child PG rating and allowed Olaf to be truly menacing.
Yeah. We should just read it real quick. This is one of
it'll be too scary.
This is okay. Put the children to bed, and then you can come back. But this is one of the most terrifying moments in the entire series, I would say.
Yeah.
So the lights are out.
What page is it?
This begins on page 157.
Okay.
It says, "Then, just as she reached the switch, Violet felt a hand on her shoulder." So he's in proximity.
He's right there.
He's right there. A figure leaned in to whisper into her ear, "I'll get my hands on your fortune if it's the last thing I do," the voice hissed. "And when I have it, I'll kill you and your siblings with my own 2 hands." Oh, even as I read it, like chill right here and now as I read it, chills are going down my body. And I'm just like, geez.
Yeah.
That's a good villain.
Very dark.
Yeah.
Like, Snicket doesn't hold back, even though it's a children's novel. This guy is going to kill these children.
Yes.
And the danger is imminent and real. And then Violet turns the lights on and poof, he's gone.
Yeah.
And they pursue because they hear a car start and they go to the edge of the street and they get to the street just in time to see a black car turn the corner into the night.
Yes.
And he's gone.
He's gone.
That's a great, that is an ending of the sort that you can't wait to read the next book.
Yes.
Because you
Which
can't wait. Yeah, you can't wait to see him come back.
Yeah.
Because he's so evil. Like you have to fight him again. It's addicting. It's great.
Yeah.
So
well, Dan, we've been talking for a while.
Oh yeah.
Final thoughts on the Bad Beginning.
Final thoughts. I think it's a great book. It's a tightly woven story. It's a wonderful novel with an exciting plot, well written. One need not read all 13 books just to appreciate the one episode, The Bad Beginning, and just get enough of that very well written plot. What do you think?
I would say I agree with all that. And going back to the philosophical and theological assumptions behind the book and how one approaches it as a Christian, while we were talking about, you mentioned the Psalms, you mentioned Job, and I would also want to throw Ecclesiastes out there. Ecclesiastes, if you're familiar with that book of scripture, Ecclesiastes, one of the main messages of Ecclesiastes is that there is a sense in which the world God made and life under the sun, which is a way of saying life in a sinful, fallen world, appears meaningless. The author of Ecclesiastes which is Solomon, looks at the world around him, and he says, "Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. I tried to gain all this wealth because I thought that would give me meaning, and it failed me. I tried to find pleasure in women, and it failed me. Everything I do seems pointless." And throughout the book, he says, all there is to do is to just eat, drink, and enjoy the fruit of your labor. That's all you have going for you, it seems. And then at the end of the book, he says, all has been said. The final matter, the final word is fear God and keep his commandments. So even in a meaningless fallen world, or I should say a seemingly meaningless world, which the Bible acknowledges, there's a sense in which the world does seem meaningless. It can appear that way on the surface, but we trust in God's sovereignty and we keep his commandments anyways when life seems meaningless. And that's what the Baudelaires do throughout the entire series. They're not acknowledging the covenant God of the Bible. They're not acknowledging Yahweh, but they understand. We don't know why this is happening to us. We don't understand what the point of it is, but we have to move on. We have to keep going, and we have to keep doing the next right thing. And that's a lesson that we as Christians can take and apply to our lives. So if you get nothing else from this episode or from the books themselves, if you choose to read them, get that though things appear dark and though things at times appear meaningless, all you have to do is just keep going and trust God. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the Eternal Library. Join us next time as we paint some fences, search for some buried treasure, and use politically incorrect names for Native Americans on the next episode of the Eternal Library. Have a great time, y'all. See you soon.
Bye.